Hey, Soul Stories fam. We've got a swoon-worthy love story for you today. Let's jump in and tell us, what city are you watching from? Crystal chandeliers hanging high from the ceiling cast thousands of shimmering lights, reflecting on champagne glasses and glittering evening gowns. The luxurious wedding hall at the five-star hotel was adorned with white roses and silver candles, every detail exuding overwhelming opulence. The live band played a lilting waltz, its melody urging everyone into the rhythmic swirl of romance. Elena Parker sat alone at a round table in the corner, trying to maintain a calm exterior, even as her palms grew damp with sweat. Her navy blue dress hugged her slim figure, while the high heels she wore had made her steps feel somewhat awkward across the red-carpeted floor. She hardly knew anyone here besides her best friend, the bride, who was now busy holding the groom's hand and smiling radiantly under the photographer's flashing lights. "Alone, are you?" A woman's voice from the next table broke in, tinged with a half-smile. Elena gave a small nod, replying curtly, yet she could still feel the woman's scrutinizing gaze. Hardly the first time. Lavish weddings were always full of whispers. She came alone? No boyfriend? Looks a little out of place, doesn't she? Elena sighed softly and raised her glass to her lips, masking her discomfort behind a sip of wine. She usually didn't care about idle stares, but tonight, under the glittering eyes of the high society crowd, her solitude seemed amplified to an almost unbearable degree. She glanced at her watch. Only 8 o'clock. Far too early to leave without seeming rude. Just as Elena was about to rise and find a quiet spot to breathe, a tall figure appeared beside her table. He sat down with a decisive motion, as if this seat had always belonged to him. A perfectly tailored black suit, a silver silk tie catching the light, and sharp features paired with a cold, piercing gaze instantly drew the attention of those nearby. Elena blinked, caught off guard, when the man leaned closer, his deep voice brushing her ear. "Pretend you're with me." Elena froze. Her heart skipped a beat, half stunned, half intrigued. "Excuse me?" she whispered back, leaning slightly away to keep some distance. Without looking at her, his eyes stayed fixed on a group of guests a few tables away. "They're gossiping. If you don't mind, let's pretend we came together." Elena let out a quiet laugh, both annoyed and bemused by the absurdity. "And you think I'll just play the girlfriend of a complete stranger?" At last he turned toward her, steel gray eyes, cold yet glinting beneath their icy surface. He leaned down slightly, close enough for Elena to catch the refined scent of sandalwood rising from his collar. "Just pretend. Trust me, you'll avoid those unpleasant stares, and I'll dodge a meaningless setup. We both win." Elena bit her lip, hesitating for a second. Honestly, he wasn't wrong. Already the looks aimed her way had shifted from judgmental to curious. "Oh, so the girl sitting alone actually has a date? Fine." Her lips curved in a half-teasing, half-defiant smile. "But how far are you planning to take this act?" His brow arched, the corner of his mouth lifting faintly. "Leave that to me." Then he draped his arm casually over the back of her chair, a gesture so naturally intimate it made nearby guests cover their mouths and giggle. Elena straightened instinctively, a silent alarm sounding in her head. Danger. This man is far too skilled at playing the part. "What's your name?" she asked softly, suspicion edging her tone. "Peter Blackwood." His answer was brief, needing no elaboration. Elena stiffened. That name was hardly unfamiliar. The youngest CEO in finance, infamous for his cold ruthlessness in the business world. Good grief, am I really pretending to be Peter Blackwood's girlfriend? She was about to react when he smoothly poured more wine into her glass, every inch the courteous gentleman. "Relax, Elena Parker." He spoke her full name, and her heart faltered. "You know me?" Peter shrugged. "I have a good memory for remarkable faces." His gaze locked with hers, so sharp Elena had to look away, her pulse racing, whether from discomfort or something else, she wasn't sure. The rest of the evening turned into a finely tuned performance. When a guest approached their table, Peter introduced Elena as his special someone, his voice steady though his eyes carried a hint of amusement. Elena, though awkward, played along, smiling sweetly, nodding as though it were true. "You two make such a lovely couple," one lady praised, her glance full of implication. Elena nearly laughed. "Me, a financial journalist fueled by instant coffee and deadlines, matched with this arrogant CEO?" Yet strangely, under the weight of those watching eyes, the role didn't feel unbearable. Whenever she faltered, Peter would lean in with a quiet joke or skillfully steer the conversation in a different direction. "You're quite the actor," Elena murmured as they stepped away to fetch dessert. Peter glanced at her, the faint curve of his lips returning. "Who said I was acting?" The short reply sent warmth rushing to her cheeks, her heart skipping a beat once again. In that moment, amid the glittering lights and music of the grand hall, they could have been mistaken for true lovers, though they had only just met an hour ago. The strange chemistry between two strangers charged the air around them, half playful, half electric. Elena took another sip of wine, suppressing the smile tugging at her lips. She told herself, "This is just a performance. Tomorrow everything will return to normal." But deep down she knew, the instant that man whispered, "Pretend you're with me," a story neither of them could foresee had already begun. Elena thought the little play at the wedding would end the moment fireworks lit up the sky. By morning she'd be back to her usual world, laptop, deadlines, and thick stacks of financial reports. But life, of course, never let her off that easily. 3 days later, just as Elena stepped out of the newsroom, a sleek black Bentley pulled up in front. The window rolled down, revealing a familiar cold face. Peter Blackwood. She froze, her heart skipping a beat. "Don't tell me you're here to buy a newspaper." Peter glanced at his watch, his low voice steady. "If you're not busy, we need 5 minutes." "Sounds like a political interview," Elena quipped. But in the end, she opened the car door and slid inside. The luxurious interior made her worn-out heels feel wildly out of place. He didn't waste time. "Do you remember what I said at the wedding?" Elena smirked. "Hard to forget, especially since I nearly choked from all that fake smiling in front of those ladies." The corner of his mouth curved faintly. "Here's the thing. Both the media and shareholders are putting pressure. They think I'm abnormal because I don't have a girlfriend nor a family yet. My stock doesn't rise or fall based on my private life, but the rumors are irritating." Elena crossed her arms. "So you want me to keep pretending?" "Exactly." Peter met her gaze directly. "I need someone smart, strong enough not to turn into a laughingstock before the press. And," he paused for a beat, "I thought you played the role exceptionally well." Elena burst out laughing. "Well, that's a strange compliment. Instead of 'you're beautiful,' it's 'you're a great actress.'" "Both are true." His calm reply silenced her instantly. The air in the car grew taut. Elena knew she should refuse. She didn't have time to play anyone's fake girlfriend. But then a thought struck. If she agreed, she'd gain access to the upper echelons of society, right into the circle of figures tied to the financial scandal her newsroom was investigating. This could be the very door she needed. Resting her chin in her hand, she feigned deliberation. "And how exactly do you plan to compensate me for this role?" "Respect, discretion, and a touch of convenience," Peter replied without hesitation. "Elena Parker doesn't sell out that cheap." She narrowed her eyes, teasing. "I want full rights to walk away anytime I find you unbearably boring." A soft laugh escaped him, rare and warm, like ice cracking under sunlight. "Deal. And I reserve the right to end the agreement if you turn into a PR disaster. The only disaster here is your suit being too perfect, making other women look at me like I'm leeching. Then I'll look at you with enough devotion to make them believe otherwise." His tone stayed flat, but there was a mischievous spark in his eyes. Elena swallowed hard. This man really did know how to throw a woman off balance. She extended her hand. "Temporary deal." His hand closed firmly and warmly around hers. "Just pretend, Parker." "Yes, pretend." She emphasized the word, though deep down it felt like she had just stepped into a dangerous game. The very next day, their pretend relationship faced its first test. Peter took Elena to a charity gala. "You sure about this?" "These are brand new heels. I might trip on the red carpet," Elena muttered as the car door opened. "If you fall, I'll carry you inside." Peter's tone was matter of fact. You do realize lines like that make it very hard for me to focus, right? Exactly. That's the plan. He held out his hand to her, like a gentleman straight out of another century. Inside the hall, all eyes turned to them at once. The murmurs rose. Peter Blackwood has a girlfriend? Who is she? Elena inhaled deeply, smiling gracefully. Act, Parker. Pretend you're writing an undercover feature. Peter bent close to her ear, his warm voice brushing against her. Your smile's much better than at the wedding. Looks less forced. You should try it too, instead of keeping that frozen mask on, Elena whispered back. He tilted his lips slightly, letting the faintest curve show. Like this. Elena caught the look, her heartbeat stumbling. Damn it. That half-smile was more dangerous than a forged financial report. The gala unfolded, and to Elena's own surprise, they played their parts seamlessly. Peter held her hand while introducing her to business partners, and she skillfully handled the press as if she truly were his secret girlfriend. When the event finally ended, they slumped back into the car, both exhaling in relief. I'll admit, Elena said, you really are a natural-born actor. Peter adjusted his tie, eyes fixed on the window. To outsiders, all I need is to stay cold. But with you, I don't have to pretend as much. Elena was left speechless. She turned away, hiding the smile tugging at her lips. Inside, she whispered to herself, Careful, Parker. This little game of pretend might not stay pretend for long. In the days that followed, Elena Parker's name suddenly began circulating regularly on the lips of high society, not because she was a sharp financial journalist, but because she was the unexpected girlfriend of Peter Blackwood. Elena often asked herself, how did I end up in this charade? But each time she looked in the mirror and saw the evening gown borrowed from her sister's closet, along with the ornate invitation card in her purse, she reminded herself, this is an opportunity. Act the part, but observe. Maybe I'll uncover a lead for that financial scandal. On Friday night, Peter took her to a fundraising gala at the Art Museum. The grand hall glowed under dazzling lights. Abstract paintings hung along the walls, and guests in expensive attire moved like chess pieces across the floor. Don't be nervous, Peter murmured as he guided Elena inside, his steady hand resting on her waist. I'm not nervous, she replied, though her heel nearly caught on the edge of the carpet, making her stumble. Peter frowned slightly before catching her arm. Careful. I don't want my fake girlfriend turning into a joke in the first 5 minutes. Elena shot him a glare and whispered back, Instead of mocking me, you could just say I look beautiful, you know? He tilted his head, his icy eyes flickering with a spark. You look beautiful. But your shoes are clearly the traitor here. Elena bit her lip to hide a smile, then straightened up and slipped back into her role. Throughout the evening, they had to publicly display affection under the watchful eyes of the guests. Peter kept his composed CEO expression, but each time she faltered, he covered for her effortlessly. Like the moment she accidentally dropped a silver spoon into her glass of red wine, producing a loud, clanging king. Curious eyes turned toward her, and Elena flushed crimson. Without missing a beat, Peter lifted his own glass, tapped it lightly with a clear clink-clink, and smiled. Allow me to propose a toast to tonight's success. The crowd immediately cheered, laughter dissolving the awkwardness. Elena looked at him, equal parts grateful and astonished. So the cold-blooded CEO does know how to save the moment. The most striking moment came when they posed for photos in front of a wall of white orchids. The photographer directed, Mr. Blackwood, hold your girlfriend a little closer. Elena nearly protested, but Peter had already pulled her firmly against him, whispering near her ear, Just pretend we're playing happy newlyweds. Her heart skipped wildly. She forced a smile, but the flashing cameras captured the scene from every angle. As soon as they stepped down, Elena glared at him. You took advantage of that way too much. Peter remained calm. You did well. Your smile looked more natural than I expected. So you're saying I usually smile falsely? He didn't answer, just gave the faintest curve of his lips. That silence left Elena both annoyed and strangely warmed. Even while the performance went smoothly, Elena didn't forget her true goal. Whenever Peter was occupied with business partners, she quietly drifted near other tables, eavesdropping on scattered conversations. One night, standing by the buffet, She overheard two middle-aged businessmen whispering about funds flowing through a subsidiary in the Cayman Islands. The keyword instantly triggered her journalist's instincts. Elena quickly memorized the company name and the vague numbers they mentioned. When she returned to the table, Peter frowned. "Where did you disappear to?" "Getting more dessert." Elena held up a plate with a tiny mousse, her smile all innocence. He studied her for a moment, as though trying to read something behind her bright brown eyes. Finally, he shook his head lightly. "Don't make me search for you in the crowd. A real girlfriend doesn't vanish halfway through. A fake one does." Elena grinned, though inside she was on high alert. "He's sharper than I thought. I need to be careful." Toward the end of the night, as they passed through the gallery, Peter stopped before a deep blue landscape painting. His voice dropped unexpectedly. "My mother used to love this shade of blue. She said it reminded her of the sea back home." Elena blinked in surprise. This was the first time he'd shared anything personal, beyond the curt lines of a CEO. She glanced sideways and noticed his gaze wasn't cold now, but tinged with memory. "I didn't think you'd ever talk about family," she said softly. "I didn't think I'd tell anyone at this event," he replied, his voice low and warm. In that moment, Elena realized that beneath his icy exterior, Peter was also a man carrying hidden corners and longings. That sudden glimpse of warmth made her heart stir in an unusual way. On the ride home, silence filled the car. Elena leaned back, her eyes drifting to the invitation card still tucked in her purse. These events were opening doors to the world she needed to access. "Funds in Cayman," she repeated to herself. "I need to trace this lead. But what if Peter's involved?" She turned to glance at him. He was looking out the window, calm and unreadable. Unbidden, she recalled his steady hand saving her from falling, the look in his eyes when he mentioned his mother. Part of her wanted to believe he was innocent, but her profession and instincts whispered, "No one in the financial world is completely clean." "What is it?" Peter suddenly turned, catching her stare. Elena quickly smiled, masking her thoughts. "Nothing, just wondering what I should wear tomorrow to match this girlfriend role." He nodded, the faintest curve touching his lips. "Wear whatever makes you comfortable. The rest, I'll handle." Elena smiled back, though her heart churned. This was still a play. But if one day it stopped being pretend, what then? Elena thought this pretend relationship would only extend to lavish parties, where they held hands just to fend off curious stares. But on Saturday night, Peter proved she had guessed completely wrong. The familiar Bentley stopped in front of her apartment, the driver stepping out to open the door. Peter appeared, dressed in a suit simpler than usual, yet still radiating that unmistakable aura. "And where are you dragging me this time? Another tuxedo-filled gala?" Elena asked as she slid into the car, half serious, half joking. "No," he replied shortly. "Tonight is different. Less wine, more music." 15 minutes later, they pulled up at an old theater downtown. On the glowing marquee, special symphony concert, Beethoven and Rachmaninoff. Elena blinked in surprise. "You're taking me to classical music?" Peter shrugged, his voice steady. "My pretend girlfriend needs a touch of reality, too. Otherwise, the audience will see through the script." She chuckled softly and followed him inside. The theater glowed in golden hues, its high ceiling painted with murals, rows of red velvet seats stretching out beneath the chandeliers. As the lights dimmed, the orchestra began its first notes. Elena sat beside Peter, shoulders brushing in the narrow space, and felt a flicker of awkwardness. The music swelled, at times soft as a whisper, at times surging like a storm. In the dim light, she stole a glance. Peter sat upright, his usual stern face softened, his gaze distant, as if fixed on some place beyond the present. Between movements he spoke, his deep voice blending with the cello's resonance. "When I was little, my mother used to play pieces like these at night. She would say, 'Peter, you can be anything you want, but always remember to listen.'" Elena tilted her head. It was the first time he mentioned his mother. "She died when I was 10, he continued, still staring at the stage. "My father was different. To him, silence mattered more than music. He believed a Blackwood son had to be strong, flawless, no mistakes allowed." Elena held her breath, sensing a weight in his words that had never been revealed before. Flawless. Sounds suffocating, she whispered. He turned toward her, gray eyes glinting in the soft light. It was. But without perfection, I'd never be where I am today. My father left me no other choice. Elena swallowed hard, resisting the impulse to reach out and touch him. Instead, she offered a gentle smile. Maybe he forgot that sometimes imperfection is what makes someone truly unforgettable. A beat of silence passed, then Peter's lips curved faintly. Maybe. After the concert, they stopped at a small cafe near the square. Unlike the upscale places he usually frequented, this one was simple. Wooden tables, warm golden lights, and the rich scent of roasted coffee. Never thought I'd see Peter Blackwood sitting in a cafe like an ordinary man, Elena teased. Don't tell anyone. He lifted his cappuccino, taking a sip. I'd lose my cold CEO image. She laughed, surprised to find he actually knew how to joke. They talked for a while, about music, about distant business trips. And slowly, Elena realized that behind the icy facade and dry numbers, Peter had a heart that could be moved. For a fleeting moment, she almost lost sight of her mission. Almost. While Peter stepped outside to take a call, Elena pulled out her phone and scrolled quickly through the photos she'd taken at the concert. Donation envelopes and sponsor nameplates. Some names matched the list she was investigating about those shady funds in Cayman. She saved them, pulse quickening with excitement. This is progress. The deeper I go into Peter's world, the closer I get to the truth. When he returned, she slipped her phone away, pretending to stir her coffee. Something wrong? He asked, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. No, just... She shrugged lightly, thinking maybe I should wear lower heels tomorrow so you'll stop mocking me. Peter's lips curved into that familiar half-smile. Then I'll just hold your hand tighter, so your shoes won't have a chance to betray you again. The words caught her off guard. Then she burst out laughing, hiding her sudden fluster. That night, back in her small apartment, Elena sat before her laptop, pulling up her notes. Names and figures were beginning to sketch a hazy picture. Her fingers brushed her lips, still tingling with the memory of his story about his mother. Her heart and her mind were heading into battle. On one side, a powerful man with cracks of unexpected warmth. On the other hand, her duty as a journalist was to chase the truth, even if it shattered her own heart. Elena whispered to herself, "Just pretend, Parker. Don't forget." But deep down, she knew. This act was already starting to feel far more real than she ever intended. Elena never thought she would feel the clash of two worlds this clearly. By day, she was a financial journalist, buried in data streams and dry spreadsheets. By night, she was the pretend girlfriend of a cold CEO, appearing at galas where champagne overflowed and laughter burst like fireworks. Then one late night, while poring over financial reports on her laptop, Elena froze. Amid the tangled numbers, one subsidiary stood out, BLC Holdings. Money funneled in from anonymous offshore accounts, only to vanish as if into thin air. Money laundering. Elena gripped her pen tightly, her pulse racing. This was her first truly valuable lead. But BLC Holdings belonged to the Blackwood Group. She leaned back in her chair, exhaling heavily. God, I'm pretending to be the girlfriend of the CEO of this company. Her rational side urged, this is your chance to break the scandal wide open. Her heart countered. What if he isn't involved? What if he's just another victim of the system? The more she thought about it, the more torn she felt. At the same time, Peter invited her to his best friend's birthday party. More intimate, meaning fewer tuxedos and more cocktails. Elena wasn't exactly excited, but she couldn't refuse. She told herself, think of it as part of the investigation. Who knows what I might overhear? That night, the atmosphere was nothing like the formal banquets. Neon lights flickered, jazz mixed with pop beats filled the air, and guests danced freely. Elena sat at the bar, twirling her martini glass, thinking, if I wrote an article tomorrow titled Cold-Blooded CEO Knows How to Dance Cha-Cha, Wall Street would faint. What's making you smile to yourself? Peter's voice came from behind. He held a glass of whiskey, his tie loosened, jacket unbuttoned, so different from his usual polished self. Just imagining a few headlines, Elena shrugged. Something like, Blackwood drunk, dancing on tables, stock drops 3%. Peter arched a brow, taking a sip. If that ever happened, my stock would drop at least 10%. Elena burst out laughing, surprised to find he actually had a sense of humor. The party stretched late into the night. When most guests had left, Peter walked Elena outside. The night air was cool, the taste of alcohol still lingering faintly between them. Are you a little drunk? Elena tilted her head, squinting at him. I can handle it, Peter replied, though his steps slowed slightly. They stopped on the stone steps outside the hall. Golden street lamps cast their long shadows across the pavement. Elena opened her mouth to break the silence, but Peter turned to her. His usual steel-gray eyes glowed with an unusual warmth. He stepped closer, closing the distance to barely an arm's length. Elena, he said softly. What? She stammered, instinctively taking half a step back, only to hit the wall behind her. You make me forget this is just pretend. Before she could react, he leaned down and kissed her. The kiss was sudden, brief, but intense. The taste of whiskey mingled with his familiar scent of sandalwood. Elena froze for a few seconds. Then her heart pounded so wildly she couldn't push him away. When Peter finally pulled back, he stayed close enough for his warm breath to brush her skin. Are you insane? Elena whispered, her cheeks blazing. Maybe. His voice was low, a faint, elusive smile on his lips. Elena touched her mouth, torn between laughing and screaming. Part of her shouted, God, the ice-cold CEO just kissed me. Another part reminded her, don't forget the money laundering. Don't forget your mission. We're just pretending, Elena said, her voice uneven. Yes, Peter nodded, but his gaze was anything but pretend. But some moments, I don't want to act anymore. Elena was speechless, her heartbeat hammering. On the ride home, the only sound was the low hum of the engine. Peter rested with his eyes closed, while Elena stared out the window, her thoughts tangled. She had just uncovered a scandalous lead, yet also received a kiss that made her heart race for real. When the car stopped in front of her building, Peter opened his eyes, his voice husky. Good night, Parker. Elena stepped out, stood for a long moment, watching the car disappear into the night. She whispered, Good night, Blackwood. And here's hoping I don't dream of trouble. That night she tossed and turned in bed. The laptop on her desk still glowed with the report on BLC Holdings, untouched. Instead of reading, Elena only reached up to touch her lips, half smiling, half sighing. In the darkness she knew it clearly. The first crack had appeared. Monday morning, Elena sat in her small office at the newsroom, staring at rows of cold numbers on her laptop screen. Beside her, a colleague whispered with theatrical urgency, Elena, fresh intel. A batch of documents shows the final signatory for BLC Holdings. Was Peter Blackwood. Her heart stopped. Are you sure? I'm 70% sure. But we don't have originals yet, just leaked scans. It'll take time to verify. Elena nodded, feigning calm, though inside she felt strangled. Peter? The man who kissed her breathless just days ago? The man who told her about his mother, about his childhood? He signed those papers? She tried to shake it off. A journalist had to stay sharp, but her heart kept whispering, what if he's innocent? What if this is a trap? Elena shut her eyes, repeating to herself, Parker, don't go soft. Justice is justice. Yet the words tasted far more bitter than she expected. That afternoon, Peter called unexpectedly. Are you free? I want you to come with me to headquarters. I have something to share. His voice was low, decisive. Elena hesitated for a beat, then agreed. It was also a chance to observe. The moment she stepped into the Blackwood Group's towering glass building, she felt as if she had crossed into another world. A vast atrium, ceilings reflecting light, employees moving briskly like worker bees. This is where he runs his empire, she thought, and I am pretending to be the tycoon's girlfriend. The elevator carried them to the 50th floor. Peter's office was as wide as a modern museum, floor-to-ceiling glass with a panoramic city view, a walnut desk, and bookshelves lined with leather spines. Wow, Elena muttered. Add a kitchen, and I could move in. Peter glanced at her, the corner of his mouth twitching. You'd find working here anything but comfortable. but I think you'll like this. He led her to a massive world map on the wall, dotted with red pins across continents. This is my expansion plan, Peter explained, voice deep and steady. Next year, I want to invest in clean energy in Asia, biotech in Europe, and online education in South America. If we get it right, the company won't just make money. It'll leave something of real value for the next generation. Elena stared at him, stunned. Not just a money-hungry CEO, as the press painted him. He was talking about changing the world. Sounds like a Nobel speech, she teased lightly, though her chest warmed. Peter chuckled softly, his eyes gentler. Do you always have to hide behind sarcasm? It's my defense mechanism, Elena admitted, quickly turning away to mask her unease. Guilt hit her like a wave. He trusted her. He was sharing things he probably never told the press. And she? She had a USB stick in her bag containing data on money laundering. Elena felt like she was playing two roles on the same stage. Peter's girlfriend on one side, and a journalist poised to expose him on the other. That evening after work, Peter took her to dinner at a small riverside restaurant. No galas, no camera flashes, just soft candlelight and the sound of water lapping against the shore. Elena sat across from him, holding the menu but unable to read a word. In her mind, the word signatory blinked like a warning light. You all right? Peter tilted his head. You've been distracted all afternoon. I'm fine, Elena forced a smile. Just hungry. If you're hungry, you should eat. I could order the entire menu if necessary. His tone was so serious that Elena burst out laughing. Are you trying to turn me into living proof for shareholders that your empire is branching into gastronomy? Possibly, if you agree to eat enough. The air grew lighter, but when Elena met his eyes, her chest tightened. He was trusting her, opening up to her, and all she wanted to ask was, did you sign those papers? But she couldn't. Not yet. After dinner, Peter suggested a walk by the river. Streetlights shimmered on the water, the breeze cool against their faces. Do you ever feel, Peter said quietly, like you have to keep pushing just to please everyone? Elena startled. Are you talking about yourself or me? Both. He stopped, locking eyes with her. I've never met anyone as independent and sharp-edged as you, who still makes people want to protect her. Elena flushed, quickly deflecting. You should drink less wine. It makes you say things that could be misunderstood. It's not the wine, he answered softly, firmly. Her heart raced, her thoughts tangled. If he truly signed, she would have to expose him. But if he was innocent, she'd be the only traitor. Biting her lip, she masked her turmoil with a joke. Tell me, if I trip again in these heels, can you guarantee you'll catch me? Peter smirked, leaning close to her ear. No matter how many times you fall, I'll catch you. As long as you let me. His words made Elena want to laugh and cry simultaneously. That night, back at her apartment, she opened her laptop. The scanned document glowed on the screen. Peter's signature, bold and precise. It could be forged, or it could be real. Elena buried her face in her hands. Justice or love? Parker, you have to choose. But God, she wasn't ready. Outside, the city lights blazed. Inside her small apartment, Elena felt like a tightrope walker. Truth on one side, her heart on the other. And the rope was trembling more violently with every step. Still following the story? If this found you outside Soul Stories, welcome home. Comment below. What story do you want to hear next? If Elena had to name this stage of her life, she would probably call it night and day. By day, she was a financial journalist, tearing through numbers and dissecting reports. By night, she became Peter's pretend girlfriend, swept into evenings of romance, unexpected hand-holding, and sometimes glances strong enough to keep her awake until morning. Hold still, Parker. Peter tilted his head, adjusting the strap of her necklace on her shoulder. You act like my stylist, Elena muttered, cheeks heating. Not a stylist, he said smoothly, just a man who appreciates beauty. Elena looked up, almost laughing. This CEO truly had a way of making her both annoyed and unsettled at once. That evening, they attended a small gathering that was not too crowded. Peter and Elena worked like a perfectly synced pair. He reminded her not to leave her wine glass empty too long, while she pulled him into lighter conversations to dodge boring business chatter. Amid curious stares, Peter leaned down and whispered, "You're doing better than I expected." "Really? Then I'll raise my fee," Elena shot back, eyes glimmering. He chuckled softly, a rare sound, like ice cracking in winter. Elena felt dizzy. Damn it, why does my heart race just because he laughs? A few days later, Peter unexpectedly brought her to his family estate. It was like a small palace in the suburbs. Old white walls, a blooming rose garden, a pond reflecting the sky. "Why bring me here? Testing whether I'm afraid of haunted castles?" Elena teased, half serious. "To meet the person I trust most." Elena froze. The person Peter trusted? Moments later, a young woman appeared, with soft brown hair and bright eyes. Peter introduced gently, "This is Emily, my sister." Emily smiled warmly. "So you're Elena. I've finally met my brother's secret girlfriend." Elena blushed, almost blurting out fake, but Peter's hand lightly pressed her back in warning. "That's right," he said, voice softer than usual. "Elena is someone special." Her heart stumbled. Was he serious? Or just acting for his sister? Dinner was unexpectedly cozy. Emily shared childhood stories that made Elena laugh, and Peter chimed in, teasing his sister, and occasionally her too. When Emily left to fetch dessert, Elena whispered, "You're making me feel like a real girlfriend." Peter's gaze deepened. "Maybe because I want it that way." Elena's breath caught. She grabbed her glass to hide the redness in her cheeks. That night, back at her apartment, Elena tossed and turned. Each time she closed her eyes, Peter's image returned. In a simple suit, smiling faintly at her. She sat up, opened her laptop, and forced herself to focus on work. But instead of numbers, her mind replayed his words. "Maybe because I want it that way." She ruffled her hair. "God, Parker, what are you doing?" The next morning, sneaking into a data archive she had access to as a journalist, Elena stumbled upon something she never expected. A money transfer report stamped with BLC Holdings. Huge sums were funneled from shady funds into subsidiary accounts in Europe. And at the bottom, a familiar signature. Peter Blackwood. Elena froze. Her hands trembled as she zoomed in. Yes, it was his handwriting. Bold, decisive strokes. "No way," she whispered, her heart twisted. If this were real, then the man who had just introduced her to his sister was directly tied to money laundering. But what if it was forged? What if someone was exploiting his name? Her head spun. What am I supposed to do? That afternoon, Peter called, "I'm free. Want to take a walk?" Elena almost refused, but his voice was lighter than usual. Sincere, almost like an invitation. She agreed. They strolled along the riverbank, the golden sunset spilling across the water. Peter suddenly stopped and handed her a small box. "A gift?" Elena raised a brow. "Does it come with a tracking device?" He chuckled. "Just a pen. I figured a journalist like you would appreciate it." She opened it. Indeed, a fine fountain pen, her name engraved on the side. Elena held it tight, her heart both warmed and aching. He trusted her, while she hid the biggest secret from him. She forced a laugh to cover her feelings. "You know, this gift feels like pressure. Almost like you're signing me into a long-term girlfriend contract." Peter tilted his head, his voice low. "And what if that's exactly what I want?" Elena went silent. Inside, the war reignited. Justice or love. That night, she couldn't sleep. The pen sat on her desk, gleaming under the lamplight. Her laptop screen still displayed the transfer report. On one side, a small gift filled with warmth. On the other hand, evidence that could destroy Peter. She whispered, half laughing, half choked. "Congratulations, Parker. You've officially become the heroine of a tragedy you wrote yourself." In the quiet room, only the clock ticked steadily, while her heart raced in chaos. Elena's sleepless nights had just begun. For a week straight, Elena felt like she was walking a tightrope, one strong gust away from plummeting. Every morning at the newsroom, her editor summoned her to his office. Sitting behind a desk piled high with files, glasses slipping down his nose, his voice was stern enough to make any reporter sweat. "Elena, you already have the scanned signature. What are you waiting for?" "It hasn't been fully verified yet, sir." Elena swallowed, unable to meet his eyes. Her editor slammed a hand on the desk. Listen, this can't wait. Other outlets are sniffing around. If you don't file within 2 days, I'll hand it to Roberts. He could turn Peter Blackwood into Wall Street's cold-blooded wolf in 500 words. Is that what you want? Elena froze. Roberts was infamous, sharp, ruthless. If he wrote it, Peter would be shredded to pieces with no mercy. Her heart screamed, no! No one else can write about him like that. But her reason whispered, this is journalism. Justice doesn't wait. Elena forced herself to nod. All right, I'll write it, but I need some time to polish it. Her editor's eyes cut through her like x-rays. 1 week, no more. Or you lose the story, and maybe your position. Elena walked out, her legs heavy. She wanted to scream, but all she could do was sigh until her lungs ached. That night, in her apartment, the laptop screen glowed, a blank page blinking at her. An hour passed and not a single word was typed. She pressed a hand against her chest. Parker, what are you doing? Her professional conscience told her to write, but her heart refused. Peter didn't seem like the greedy, ruthless man tied to money laundering. And yet, that signature. Elena buried her hands in her hair, letting out a bitter laugh. Justice and love. Congratulations, I've chosen 2 eternal enemies. She opened her closet, eyes falling on the pen box Peter had given her. The small gift tightened her chest. If he were innocent, one false article could destroy him. If he was guilty, this love would be her greatest shame. The next day, whispers swirled around the newsroom. Word is Parker's sitting on a bombshell about Blackwood. Will she actually publish? Better not let Roberts grab it. If he writes it, Blackwood's finished. Elena pressed her lips together. A decision sparked inside her. She couldn't let Roberts take it. If anyone was going to write, it had to be her. At least then, she could buy time. Marching into her editor's office, her voice was steady. I'll write it. The article will come from me. Her editor's face broke into satisfaction. Good. 1 week. No delays. Elena left, her heart pounding. She had just signed her own sentence. But at least this gave her time and a chance to face Peter. That evening, Elena sat on her bed, phone in hand, thumb hovering over Peter Blackwood's name. She typed, "We need to talk about your company," then deleted it. Typed again, "I have something important to tell you." Deleted. God, I sound like a 17-year-old afraid to confess a crush, not a journalist about to drop an explosive investigation, she muttered with a self-deprecating laugh. Finally, she took a deep breath and wrote simply, "We need to meet. Privately." Less than a minute later, Peter replied, "Tomorrow night. My office." Elena gripped her phone, her chest both sinking and racing. Tomorrow, everything would explode. That night, sleep never came. She tossed, turned, rolled left, rolled right, her mind a storm. One moment, she saw Peter by the window, his gentle eyes gazing out as he spoke of his mother. Next, the transfer report with his decisive signature. She buried her face in the pillow and groaned. Why hasn't anyone invented sleeping pills specifically for journalists who fall in love with their investigation subjects? The room was silent, save for the ticking clock. Elena knew one thing for certain. Tomorrow she would have to make a choice, and that choice might shatter both her heart and her career. That morning, the brilliant sunlight outside her window meant nothing to her. Elena had just taken a bitter sip of coffee when her phone buzzed. A message lit up the screen. "Come down. I'm waiting." She stared at the words, her stomach dropping. Before she could react, a knock sounded at the door. She didn't need to guess who it was. Peter Blackwood. The door opened. He stood there, tall and imposing, filling the frame. His face was carved in ice, his gray eyes stripped of the warmth they'd held on past nights. Elena had never seen him like this, like a storm restrained only by sheer force of will. "Peter," she stammered, "don't say my name like you have the right." His voice was low and rough, each word cutting like a blade. "You got close to me just for your story, didn't you?" Elena froze. Every word pierced her chest. "I trusted you, Elena. I told you about my mother, about my plans for the future. I even brought you home to meet Emily. And you?" His voice broke into a harsh edge. "You're an investigative journalist, digging into my company." Elena drew in a shaky breath, her hands trembling. "Yes, I approached you for that reason. I'm a reporter. I found irregularities in your company, and you think I'm the mastermind? That I'm laundering money? Just some greedy, heartless CEO?" Peter's voice boomed, sharp with rage. Elena bit her lip, tears burning her eyes, but she held them back. "I don't know. I have evidence, Peter. Evidence with your signature. I can't pretend it doesn't exist. But what?" he barked. Her voice cracked, the words cutting her as much as him. "But I can't pretend I don't have feelings for you either. I'm torn between justice and my heart. I don't want to believe you're guilty, but my conscience won't let me close my eyes." Silence slammed into the room. Only Elena's frantic heartbeat filled the void. Peter stared at her, pain and fury warring in his eyes. So all the smiles, the hand-holding, that kiss, it was all part of your plan? Elena shook her head violently. "No! Maybe it started that way, but later, I truly felt something. You have to believe me." "Believe?" Peter's laugh was sharp, cold enough to make her shiver. "You've turned me into a joke. I, who trusted no one, ended up falling for a reporter's trap. Peter, please, just listen." He turned away, his voice ragged. "It's over, Elena. I don't want to see you again." The door shut with a chilling click. Elena collapsed into a chair, bearing her trembling face in her hands. Everything felt like it had shattered. For a fleeting moment, she wanted to throw it all away. Her job, the story, the evidence, just to keep him. But deep inside, another voice rose. If he's guilty, you can't look away. If he's innocent, justice will clear his name. Elena exhaled, a bitter laugh escaping. "Congratulations, Parker. You've managed to lose both love and work in a single morning." The rest of the day, she drifted like a ghost through the newsroom. Colleagues whispered, her editor pressed. Her laptop screen glared white, the cursor blinking like mockery. She typed a few words, then deleted them. Tears spilled, blurring the screen. That night, she sat by her window, staring at the glowing city. Somewhere out there, Peter was surely in his glass tower office. But now, a wall stood between them, unbreakable. Her voice quivered as she whispered into the night. "I don't know what to believe anymore, Peter. I only know I never meant to hurt you." In the days after Robert's article, Elena felt as if she'd been cast adrift in a small boat caught in a storm. The Blackwood Group was reeling, its stock plummeting uncontrollably. The media reveled in the chaos, the public devoured the scandal, and Peter had vanished from her sight. Elena withdrew from the official investigation, but she couldn't sit still. Every night she buried herself in her laptop, opening and reopening files. If she could just find the truth, she could save Peter and her own heart. One late night, sitting in a near-empty cafe, her inbox lit up. An anonymous email, no subject, no signature. Just one brief line and an attached file. "The one behind this is Richard Hale. Be careful." Elena's pulse spiked. She opened the file. Internal records, scanned contracts, transfer slips, all bearing the signature of Richard Hale, vice president of the company, the very man Peter had trusted completely. Elena slumped back into her chair, her mind in turmoil. So Peter hadn't signed. He was innocent. But how could she prove it to the world? The next night, leaving the newsroom past midnight, Elena realized she was being followed. Heavy footsteps echoed behind her, a looming shadow stretching longer under the streetlights. Two men stepped out, blocking her path. Their faces were hard, merciless. One sneered, "Mr. Hale says it's time you stop digging. You don't want to disappear, do you?" Elena's grip tightened on her bag, her heart pounding. She forced a shaky smile. "Sorry, I'm not the type to take kindly to threats." But one man raised his hand, metal glinting in the dark. Elena staggered back, her throat dry. At that exact moment, an engine roared. A familiar car screeched to a stop at the curb, the door flying open. Peter stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, his black suit stark under the streetlights. His gray eyes burned cold enough to make the men falter. "Touch her," he said, voice gravelly and low. He didn't need to shout. The weight behind his words alone made them shudder. The tension stretched, sharp as glass. Then the men cursed, retreating quickly into the shadows of the night. Elena collapsed against the wall, gasping. She looked up to see Peter standing before her, his eyes as cold as ice. How did you know I was here? She asked, her voice trembling. I make it a habit not to abandon someone who once stood beside me. His tone was clipped, stripped of any gentleness. Elena clenched her fists. She wanted to scream that he was innocent, that she had proof Richard was the real culprit. But when she opened her mouth, her throat locked. Peter, Don't! He cut her off, eyes sharp as blades. Don't call me like there's still something between us. I saved you because I won't have blood on my hands. That's all. Elena's chest constricted painfully. You don't believe me? Believe! Peter let out a bitter laugh, cold enough to slice her open. You hid from me. Betrayed me. Let the world turn me into a joke. Don't expect me to believe anything from you again. His words shattered her. She wanted to pull out the documents in her bag, to scream, I have proof you're innocent. But his eyes were so frigid, so unreachable, she couldn't speak. He turned, walking back to his car. His tall frame grew smaller, further, until he disappeared into the night. Elena stood frozen, tears spilling hot down her cheeks. She whispered to herself, You don't believe me, but I'll prove it. I'll write this piece. I'll make the world know you're innocent, even if you never want to see me again. That night, Elena returned to her apartment, opened her laptop, and with trembling fingers began to type. She knew Richard wouldn't stop. She knew she was gambling with her career, even her life. But she also knew this was the only way to restore justice for Peter, and for her own heart. Outside her window, the city still glowed. But for Elena, everything was swallowed by darkness. The darkness of danger, of loss, and of a love being torn apart. Elena's article was published on a Monday morning when the city was still half asleep. The headline wasn't flashy, but every word struck like steel. Who really stands behind the Blackwood scandal? The truth about forged signatures. Elena laid out in detail how the shady funds had been approved, pointed out the traces of forged signatures, and presented evidence that Richard Hale was the true mastermind. She wrote with all the precision of a journalist, but also with the heart of a woman who refused to let the man she loved be destroyed by false charges. The moment the article went live, the city erupted. Other outlets picked it up immediately. Blackwood's stock stopped its free fall, and Peter, once branded a criminal, was now seen in a different light, not as the culprit, but the victim. But Richard wasn't about to let things slide. That afternoon, as Elena left the newsroom, a black car cut across her path. Everything happened too fast. A cloth soaked in something sharp and chemical was pressed over her face. Darkness swallowed her. When she came to, Elena was tied to a chair inside an abandoned warehouse. Richard sat before her, his eyes cold, his voice smooth yet venomous. Miss Parker, you've disappointed me, I warned you, and yet you went this far. Elena pressed her lips together, her heart hammering. Are you really that afraid of the truth? Richard smirked. The truth only exists as long as the one holding it stays alive. You'll delete every original file or... He raised his hand, a blade catching the dim light. Elena swallowed hard, but her voice, though trembling, was steady. I'd rather die than let you keep staining the Blackwood name. Richard's eyes narrowed, stubborn. I hate the stubborn ones. Meanwhile, Peter had received word from a witness who had seen Elena being dragged into a car. Without hesitation, he sped off, coordinating with the police. His car screeched to a halt outside the warehouse. As the officers stormed in, Peter was the first through the door. Elena! Richard jolted, pressing the knife to her throat. Stay back, Blackwood. One move and she dies here and now. Peter's heart nearly stopped. In that instant, every image of Elena flashed before him, her defiant smile, her warm eyes, the time she nearly tripped in her heels. Let her go, Hale. Don't drag yourself further into the mud. Peter's voice was hoarse, his gaze burning like fire. Richard snarled, the knife pressing tighter. But in the split second he faltered as the police closed in, Peter lunged forward, yanking Elena into his arms and shoving her clear of the blade. A gunshot cracked through the air. Richard was wrestled to the ground, restrained and cuffed. Elena collapsed, blood seeping from a cut on her arm. Peter cradled her, the icy mask he always wore shattered, replaced by raw, terrifying fear. "Elena! Don't close your eyes, can you hear me?" She forced her lids open, her lips pale. "Peter, do you believe me now?" He gripped her hand tightly, his voice shaking. "Don't say another word." "I believe you. Please, Art, don't leave me." The ambulance arrived. They lifted her onto the stretcher, Peter climbing in beside her, never letting go of her hand. He bowed his head, whispering like a lost child's prayer, "God, please don't take her from me. I'll give up everything. The stocks, the company, the reputation. Just let her live." In the emergency room, Elena lay motionless, machines beeping steadily. Peter sat outside, his suit stained with blood, hair disheveled, gray eyes fixed on the closed doors, his face carved with pain and fear. The police came with updates. Richard was in custody, but Peter barely reacted. He only kept whispering the same plea over and over. "Save her. Please save her. I fear nothing, except losing Elena." That night, when the storm had finally passed, Peter realized for the first time the woman who had stepped into his life with a single whispered pretense had become the one truth he could never lose. The hospital room was stark white, so quiet that even the drip of the IV could be heard. Peter sat at her bedside, his usually steely gray eyes now red-rimmed from a sleepless night. He had never imagined himself trembling in prayer, but for the past 24 hours, he had whispered only one plea on repeat. "Elena, don't leave me." His hand never let go of hers. Her small fingers were limp, her skin pale. He pressed his lips against them, murmuring, "I'm sorry for doubting you. Sorry for leaving you alone. Just wake up and I swear I'll never let you go again." A faint sound broke the silence. Peter's head shot up. Elena's lashes trembled, then slowly lifted. "Peter?" Her voice was hoarse, weak. He held his breath, his heart exploding like fireworks. "I'm here. I'm right here." Elena blinked around the room, weary. I'm alive?" "Yes. You're safe now." Peter lowered his forehead to her hand. For the first time, the powerful man looked fragile, like a lost boy. Elena gave a faint smile. "You don't have to worry about me so much. We're not—" "Don't say that." He cut her off, his deep voice trembling. "I was a fool not to believe you. But when I saw you lying there, I realized how terrified I am of losing you." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "There were times I hid things from you. I used you to get closer to the truth. But after that, my heart betrayed my reason. I fell in love with you, Peter." He looked up, his eyes blazing yet filled with regret. "So did I. From the night you nearly fell because of those treacherous heels, I knew my heart wasn't mine anymore. But I was too proud, too cold to admit it." Elena let out a frail laugh. "You, making jokes about shoes?" "Yes, because you're the one who taught me how to joke." Peter clasped her hand tighter. "No more pretending, Elena. I want this to be real. I want the world to know you're mine." In the days that followed, Elena slowly recovered. Peter never left her side, reading reports in her hospital room, even clumsily peeling apples so badly that Emily burst into laughter. "My brother holding a knife like that? Father would faint," Emily teased. Elena laughed softly, her heart warmed. Peter glanced at her sheepishly and whispered, "I've never peeled an apple for anyone before. You should feel special." "I do." Elena's eyes sparkled as she squeezed his hand. When she was finally strong enough to leave the hospital, Peter held a press conference. Flashbulbs exploded, and reporters shouted questions. Standing at the podium, he was no longer the aloof, icy CEO. His voice rang with conviction. "I, Peter Blackwood, am innocent of these accusations. The true culprit has been arrested. And I want to thank one person, the woman who risked everything to uncover the truth." He turned, extended his hand to Elena, and pulled her into the light. The room erupted in shock. Her heart pounded wildly, but Peter looked only at her, his eyes warmer than ever. He whispered, just for her, no more pretending. Elena's tears shimmered as she smiled. No more pretending. That evening they returned to the riverside where they had once walked. But this time, there was no distance, no doubt. From his pocket, Peter pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple, glimmering ring. I can't promise you a perfect life, because I've learned perfection doesn't exist. But I promise to stand by you. Always. Will you give me a new beginning? With you? Elena laughed through her tears, covering her mouth. You really know how to pick your moments. I'm still wearing a hospital coat. All the better. Proves I'm serious, Peter said with a shrug. She nodded softly, tears streaming, a radiant smile breaking through her face. Yes, I will. He wrapped her tightly in his arms, kissed her forehead, and whispered, this time, no pretending. This time it's forever. Autumn had arrived, dressing the city in a soft golden hue beneath a sky of startling blue. That day, the Blackwood estate did not host one of its usual grand galas. There were no thousands of guests in tuxedos or glittering gowns. Instead, the garden bloomed with roses, rows of white chairs lined neatly, satin ribbons tied with care, and the familiar faces of only a few. Emily, close friends, and loyal staff who had stood by Peter for years. Elena stood behind the glass doors leading out to the garden. Her wedding dress was pure white, simple, not extravagant, hugging her figure just enough to make her glow beneath the gentle sunlight. She took a deep breath, her hand trembling around the bouquet she held. Emily giggled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Relax, my brother's out there looking at you like he's about to cry. I think he's more nervous than you are. Elena laughed, the sound easing her nerves. Peter? Nervous? Believe me, ever since you walked into his life, he hasn't been the cold machine he used to be. Emily winked. The music began. The doors opened. Elena walked slowly down the flower-strewn aisle. Every gaze turned to her, but she saw only one, Peter. He stood waiting, dressed in a simple black suit, flawless in its cut. His usually icy gray eyes shone brightly, brimming with emotion. When Elena drew closer, his lips curved into a rare, warm smile. The ceremony began. The minister's voice rang out, calm and deep. We gather here to witness a new beginning. Not a performance, not a pretense, but true love. Elena squeezed Peter's hand, her eyes glistening with tears. He looked at her, his voice hoarse but steady. I once thought I had to be perfect, to be cold, to protect everything. But when I met you, I realized all I needed was to be myself. I promise I'll never let you fight alone again. I promise I'll believe in you, even if the whole world turns away. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but her smile was radiant. Her voice wavered, yet carried strength. I came to you pretending at first, but my heart betrayed me. I fell in love with you. I promise to stand by your side, in light or in darkness. And I promise never to let treacherous heels trip me again, so you won't have to worry. Soft laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking the solemn air, and even Peter chuckled. He tightened his grip on her hand, his eyes shining. Then, the minister smiled. You may kiss the bride. Peter leaned in, brushing his lips over hers as applause rang out, cheers rose, and Emily's laughter carried above them all. After the ceremony, there was no lavish reception. Instead, Peter and Elena sat by the garden's pond, surrounded only by warm yellow lights and those dearest to them. With a glass of wine in hand, Elena tilted her head toward him. Funny, isn't it? We started with a whispered pretense. And now here we are, truly husband and wife. Peter gently brushed her hair back, his voice low and steady. No more pretending. This is forever. Elena smiled, her heart overflowing. Resting her head on his shoulder, she watched the fireworks bloom in the sky. Their reflections glimmered in their eyes, a sign that the storm had passed and ahead lay a new journey, a journey of true love.